Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast. I know so many of you listening to this show love your local bar, your local restaurant, maybe your local hotel, and have so many fond memories of time in hospitality businesses. This is the podcast where we get to chat to the human beings behind the scenes of that industry. Maybe the chefs or the bakers or the coffee roasters or the gin distillers or the craft brewers or the entrepreneurs, but all doing an amazing job of making sure that hospitality stays interesting and the big, dull, formulaic brands do not take over our high street. Please enjoy the show. In this week's episode, I am talking to Jonathan Downey, or JD, from Street Feast. And it was probably about 6 months ago that I found myself in Dinerama in Shoreditch, and the music was pumping. I had a nice craft beer in my hand, and I thought I need to find out who is behind this incredible space. And sure enough, the world's disused car parks, markets, and office blocks need Jonathan Downey. In Street Feast, he's taken the idea of street food and bars to a whole new level. At night, what were neglected sites come alive with tantalising smells of pizza and steamed buns and tacos and chicken wings, along with a buzz of conversation and the glowing light boxes of all shapes and sizes. The four very different street feasts bring together speciality bars and food traders who each do just one thing and do it really, really well. And it was because London in the 1990s wasn't doing nightlife well that Jonathan decided to combine his corporate lawyer role with a new career as a bar and club operator. It was a pretty crazy thing to do, suited and booted by day and scrubbing walls by night. But it worked for a while until the inevitable ouch moment arrived. But when that came, Jonathan freed himself up to work on more amazing hospitality ideas, like milk and honey and food fights and taco wars. So sit back, let your mouth water and enjoy this incredible journey. Jonathan, thank you so much. By the way, is it Jonathan or JD? I don't know. Is it JD once you know people?
Yeah, pretty much. Most people call me JD.
Do they? Okay, yeah. Well, by the end, I'll call you JD. But Jonathan, thank you so much for sparing the time to be on the podcast. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome. It's my first ever one.
Is it? Okay, excellent. Well, let's see. Let's hope it's fun. Before we start, can you just say where in the world are we? I've done these in sort of the middle of the countryside, interviewing farmers and coffee roasters, but where on planet Earth are we?
We're in our London Union offices in the heart of Shoreditch, EC2 postcode, EC2A. It's at the heart of the tech city in London. And we're a few hundred yards from one of our biggest sites, which is Dinerama, so it's a good location for us.
Amazing. How long have you been here?
3 years now, and we just used to be around the corner for a couple of years before that. And we worked for a while in between offices.
Okay, excellent, good. We'll come to Dinerama, which is awesome, and one of the reasons that I'm here is wanted to chat to you about it. But if you don't mind, I want to start a little bit earlier and just chat about how you got into hospitality. So your first memories, I think, was it because you've done all sorts from bars to restaurants, but was it the Manchester club scene? Was that where it all began?
Well, I think anyone who works in hospitality has probably got some kind of hospitality gene in them, you know. I never grew up in a pub or around that. I was recently away on holiday and explained to some friends the first time I ever ate in a restaurant, I was 19 years old in Boston. Went to a pizza restaurant. I was working out there one summer and I'd literally never eaten in a restaurant since. Before that, sorry. I mean, I had fish and chips from the chippy and stuff like that, but never eaten in a restaurant. And never really drank until I was kind of in my early 20s. Didn't really drink at university much or anything like that. So, wasn't kind of like fascinated or intrigued by the bar scene. But I was 17 when the Hacienda opened, and I can still remember going there for the first few times and really getting into it and just thinking this was something special and amazing. Well, that was kind of the music rather than food and drink. And just that kind of going out and, finding out things about yourself. So, and I think there's a lot of things were happening in Manchester in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. There's a fantastic club scene, and then it became a really cool bar scene. The Gay Village happened in Manchester, and that was brilliant at the time. It just felt like something that didn't exist anywhere else, really. Certainly not in Europe, I felt that anyway. And it was so vibrant and different, and the music, every bar or restaurant or cafe or wherever it was in Manchester at the time that you went in, had a great sound system and really good music. And I was just noticing that, and I've just come back from 5 days in Ibiza, and it's exactly the same there. Everywhere you go in Ibiza, everyone's got a great sound system and everyone's playing really cool music. And that's what Manchester felt like to me in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. And I wanted to bring a bit of that to London when I moved here in 1990.
Okay. It's interesting how they seem to get it right abroad. As I was skiing a few months ago, and there was a sort of sundowners bar as you come down the slope, and every evening about 4 o'clock as people were emptying the mountain, the music would be blasting out, and the atmosphere it created was just incredible. You couldn't ski past without popping in, having a beer, people dancing on the tables, and you think, and we'll come back to it probably on UK regulation and why we're not as good at that, but we miss out on a lot of opportunities to create the vibe. But before we go there, so you had a sort of pre-hospitality to career though, legal career, I think.
I studied law, went to Guildford Law College, came to work in the city at one of the big firms, did that for about 7-8 years, really enjoyed it, got to spend nearly a year in Hong Kong, got to spend a couple of years in Abu Dhabi opening the office there on an expat deal. You don't pay tax, your accommodation's covered. I came back to London in late 96 with kind of like a pile of expat cash, bought a flat, and then a year later opened my first bar. And I just kind of wanted to do that for a while. In Abu Dhabi, I'd met some friends who were hotel managers, and we got together and decided we wanted to open a hotel. And there's some great ideas for hotels. Nobody was doing this, nobody was doing that. We could do this, we could do that. But we didn't know anything about business, and we didn't have anything like the money we needed to open a hotel. So I suggested we try a bar first. And we opened in Clerkenwell, just down the road from here, EC1, in September 97. And, I think we put in 100,000 between four of us, and we borrowed 75,000 from the bank, and we opened what was called Match EC1, and it was very much in the style of a Manchester bar at the time, from the interior design to the sort of the importance of music, but also what we then added to that was like these really high-end quality sort of like cocktails where we're using fresh juices, which weren't that common at the time, unless you went into the Atlantic bar or something like that. But you had to get through that, past that guy on the door. And I wanted to kind of democratise those quality drinking and bring those to the high street, albeit a high street in the middle of nowhere at the time, really, because it was a bit of a dead zone, that bit of London in 97, between sort of like the city and the West End.
And was that pretty common that in the drink scene then, I think I've heard you say before, that it had a pretty, not even a crappy reputation, you'd experienced it, you came here a city lawyer thinking I'm going to find some cool bars like Manchester, but the reality is they were a bit crap.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it when I moved to London. At the end of I felt fantastic, coming from my background, working at one of the really smart city firms, and, getting my suit on and, sort of coming into bank and marching up Moorgate to the office and thinking, this is great, I'm going to be an international corporate lawyer. And getting into the office and working hard that first week. And then when you're training as a solicitor, you share an office with a partner. And at the end of the week, the partner says, let's go and have a drink. And it's like, great, I'm in London, we're going to go have a drink in the city with a partner. We went out of the office and we went straight across the street and downstairs into a Balls Brothers or a Davies, I can't remember what it was. And I just couldn't believe this was like the end of the week. For me, celebration. Sort of, there was only men in there. They were all a certain age. You could get one ale in a tankard. You could get red wine or white wine, and there were crackers and carrots. And that's there's no music. And that was the bar experience at the end of my first week as a, trainee lawyer in London. And I was just absolutely gutted. And I thought, this can't be it, And so I set about trying to find some scene, some nightlife, because that's March 1990. Manchester was probably the best place on the planet right then, if you were in your early 20s and like going out. And I was living in London.
Ironic.
Yeah, I'd moved at the wrong time. But so I used to go back every 2 weeks to watch the football and to go out and just, really enjoying that scene up there, and found very little like it in London. Where it was kind of becoming all bar one and picture and piano, which were new and revolutionary, I suppose, at the time. But they weren't really for me. They weren't exciting places to go out, slug and lettuce. And I've never really been a pub guy. I mean, I like going to some great pubs, and I had some great times in some great pubs, but and no nightclubs that I liked. We ended up going to a place called Heaven, which on a Friday night was a big gay night. I used to go with my girlfriend there. It was fantastic. The music was fantastic. She never got hassled. And that felt to me the closest to a night out in Manchester that I could get. And we used to go there quite a lot, actually. But I suppose that whole time of being a little bit disappointed with what was going on in London, back of my mind maybe without realising it, thought, well, there's an opportunity here and somebody should do something to...
Yeah, sowing the seeds.
Yeah.
And then by contrast, when you were in Hong Kong, I think it was it? That was the G&T moment where you went, OK, so not all drinks need to be warm and brown.
Exactly. That was a bit of an epiphany moment because I'd never been a big or regular drinker, never drank beer as a kid. I think the first time, again, I drank beer and enjoyed a glass of beer, I was 19 in Boston and it was a keg party. I mean, growing up where I grew up, you could get a pint of Harp or Skoll or something like that, and you wouldn't go near that now, you know. But that was kind of the choice, and so I forgot what I was going to say.
Hong Kong,
yeah. So when I went to Hong Kong, and I remember my first day arriving in Hong Kong at the airport, in the old airport, that amazing fly-in. I was met at the airport by the firm's driver. It's in the back of the car, and the phone rings. The car phone rings. This is 1991, remember, so that was a big deal. There's a phone in the car. And the driver answers, says, "It's for you, Mr. Downey." I was like, "Oh, I'm on the phone." So I answered the phone, and it's my predecessor who I was taking over from. And he said, "Listen, we're going for drinks at the Captain's Bar at the Mandarin Oriental. See you there at 6 o'clock. The driver dropped me at my flat. I remember going to like the 26th or the 36th floor of my flat and looking out over Hong Kong Harbour and thinking, fuck, I've made it. This is awesome. Still not qualified as a solicitor, you know, still a lowly trainee photocopying and things. First thing I did was ring my mum and tell her about it. Second thing I did was get showered, get changed and get down to the Captain's Bar. I remember ordering a gin and tonic in there. And you've got to remember, again, this is the era when if you order a gin and tonic, and this still happens all over the UK, you'd say ice and lemon with that. Do you want ice and lemon? Of course I want ice and lemon. It's a fucking gin and tonic. But this gin and tonic came in this really beautiful crystal sort of cut glass, loads of big clear ice cubes in there, a big wedge of lime, you know, a good slug of gin and the tonic on the side. And I just thought like a nice metal stirrer, I think, or a glass stirrer, I can't remember. I just thought, wow, that's what a gin and tonic can be like. And I've never had anything like that before. And it was a moment of realising the difference between kind of like everyday, mundane and really good. But the really good was quite easy to achieve. So I think that was a key moment for me in sort of like my drinks education, or my I was going to say obsession. It's not really an obsession, but my kind of passion for wanting to make and democratise quality drinking.
Yeah, it seems strange. It's a common theme of these podcasts, and it doesn't matter. I was chatting about British wine last week and how we were so late onto the British wine scene. Yeah. But actually, once we did it, we innovated and we learnt really quickly. And now we've got British wine beating a lot of the kind of champagnes. We've had the same with. Chocolate. I was with William Curley and we were chatting all about the history of chocolate on the continent. And then again, we were really late to catch up. It seems once we do catch up, we seem to learn fast and we've got a much better scene now. But why do you think it was so poor at that time?
I don't know. I think we're absolutely brilliant at taking ideas and inspiration on food and drink from other countries and evolving them and developing them, making them our own. And you see a lot of criticism these days for cultural appropriation. And I think that's what Britain is. We are a nation of immigrants, and our food culture now, especially in the big cities, is so interesting and exciting, and drink culture, because of immigration. I mean, 15 years ago, you couldn't get a decent coffee anywhere in London. I mean, you literally couldn't. And the reason there are so many great coffee shops in London now, I think, this could be nonsense, it's because of all of the Aussies and Kiwis that have been coming here on 6-month or 2-year visas or whatever they get and bringing the desire for that coffee culture with them. And so I think we do take a while to catch on sometimes, but once we do find something good, we really latch onto it. And I think the difference is a bit like, it's a bit like the Beatles and the Stones were criticised for appropriating black music. And yes, they did. But they turned it into their own thing too and made it, in some respects, better or more exciting or more marketable to a different audience than, the original. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think the more it happens, the better for me. Because if you look, for instance, I've just, again, spent 5 days in Spain. Every Spanish restaurant you go to, you get, it's the same menu. And, there's not really anyone there doing anything different unless they're from outside. My parents have lived, my mum still lives in France for like the nearly 30 years now. I spent a lot of time in France. and you just, every restaurant is the same and it's all very rigid. And after a while it gets boring. It's familiar and it's comforting and it's whatever, but it's boring for me. And I'm constantly, interested and excited by what might be new or might be a bit different.
I've been envious many times. There's a particular restaurant in Mallorca that I've been to a few times, which is lovely. It's in one of those squares, lovely food. But I'm envious that every time I go there, it's exactly the same waiter and exactly the same menu year after year after year. And I think as an operator, that's the dream scenario, but you can't get away with it in this country. We change our menu 3 or 4 times a year, and obviously the team are more transient.
Yeah, you can't go. Even if you look at a restaurant group like Hawksmoor, where they are a steak place. That's what their brand is. Even they can't stand still. They're constantly innovating on the drink side. They brought in a brilliant seafood menu with Mitch Tonks a few years ago. They're constantly coming at great, clever stuff on desserts. They're always innovating and new starters. And I think, I don't know if we just get bored quickly as a nation generally, or which I don't think the customers get that bored. I think it's kind of the owners, operators who get bored and want to be doing something new and something different. And that's what drives the innovation and the creativity.
Yeah, I think people leave. If you get a good team, people leave unless you give them that constant challenge. Otherwise, they get bored as well. So your team get bored and they go on to different places. So you've got to innovate. Yeah. So you'd been inspired then. You'd seen this amazing booze in Hong Kong. You're back in London, and unlike most people who just whinge about it, you decide to set up your own place. So Match was pretty much instantaneously successful, I think. And were you running it as well as being a lawyer at the time?
Yeah, it didn't feel instantaneous. I mean, yeah, I opened my first bar on kind of like in the evenings and on the weekends. Did a lot of the sort of like the preparatory building work by myself with a friend who came down from my hometown. Digging out. We didn't have enough space for a kitchen and the toilet, so we thought we need both.
Greedy.
So we had to dig it down like a metre and then stack the toilets on the kitchen, and we did all that ourselves and scrubbed all the walls to get back to the bare brick and stuff like that. So, but that was just good fun. That was, a really exciting time where you felt like you're building your own place. And we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, 175,000 sounds like a lot, but it wasn't when we were putting something in from scratch. I've forgotten what the question is again. I'll do this quite a lot, actually.
Don't worry, no, I've forgotten now as well. So were you running it alongside the legal firm as well? Yeah, and then how long did it take to take off?
So I was enjoying being a lawyer. I really was enjoying being a lawyer. I really enjoyed working with very clever people who were good at what they do and, were kind of high achievers and challenged you constantly to, it's quite a brainy thing to do. And but I wanted to do more. I wasn't, I was engaged in what I was doing, but it wasn't exciting. It wasn't interesting. And I just felt like there was a lot more I could do. So I wanted to get a side gig on, and off we went with the bar. And we opened it one night, and I can still remember in Clerkenwell. The only thing that was really open in Clerkenwell at the time was St. John, round the corner on St. John Street. And there were quite a few architects around there and a lot of soon-to-be lofts, but not really any residents. And I remember standing, outside on Clerkenwell Road and looking at one side of the street and looking down the other and thinking, where is everybody? But we were fortunate with our timing because the Evening Standard Bar of the Year was kind of like the big bar award back then. Time Out wasn't doing one, I don't think, at that stage. Maybe it was. And Edward Sullivan from the Evening Standard came in very early on and really liked the bar. And then we got shortlisted for Bar of the Year, which just gave us a massive boost. And then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, it was announced we were Evening Standard Bar of the Year in our first 4 or 5 months.
Amazing. So
it really made a big difference to us that.
Because you were doing something different?
Yeah, we were definitely doing something that, definitely doing something different. I think we were also lucky at the time, sorry, it's important to mention, there was a bit of a zeitgeist going on. There's 4 or 5 of us doing this similar or the same thing at the same time. So Home was a cool new bar that opened just down the road here in Shoreditch. We opened in EC1. If you keep going west, you got to sort of Alphabet in Soho. It had been open a few months. That was a really great bar with music and cocktails. And then the Met Bar was really important to the development of what we were doing because they opened a couple of months before us, and they had a great music and a scene and a great cocktail program. And they also had all this kind of celebrity visitors, and that was getting in the press, and everyone was drinking a Cosmopolitan or a French Martini or whatever it was, and that suddenly became a cool thing to do. And that's exactly what we were doing really at the same time. No one was copying anyone else. It was a zeitgeist. And so that really helped us. The success of the Met Bar really helped us. Then across the road into Mayfair, you got Momo. And, that was another... So kind of all these bars opened around the same time. And I just think they captured what people wanted. A bit like how kind of craft beer has happened. It wasn't just one person doing it. It's a few people doing a similar thing at the same time. Similarly with craft gin, maybe there was a couple of leaders on that. And there's been a lot of bandwagon businesses since. But... so it's just good timing, really, and you need that. You need that in business, a bit of good luck.
Definitely. So how long were you running the bars whilst also keeping your sort of legal job? And did the bosses know?
I wasn't running them. I've never really been like a hands-on operator because I've jumped behind the bar a couple of times and I just get in the way. I still don't know how to make a coffee using a coffee machine, a proper coffee machine. I just, hopefully what I try to do is find good people and generally leave them to it, or make sure we're on the same page about lots of things first and generally just leave them to it. Although I'm not sure many people who've worked for me would say I just leave them to it. I'd love to not interfere or get involved at all. Let's just sit down and agree this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave it to you because I trust you kind of vibe. I mean, that's the theory. It doesn't work out.
I'm smiling because I opened a restaurant 3 weeks ago, another one in Bournemouth, and I'm trying exactly that as well. And I keep saying to the manager, I don't want to be a pain in the arse, and I really don't, I'm not trying to step on your toes here because you want to leave them to it. But then also you've got a load of experience and knowledge that you can't help but share. So it's a challenge to watch that, I think, isn't it? So
what I've said a few times about opening a bar business, and I suppose it counts for a restaurant, any hospitality business, is the two most important things about your bar, your restaurant, your venue is the people who work there and the people who go there. And you've got to do everything you can to attract the best people possible. So from your concept, in terms of what your offer is and who you're marketing to and who you want to come in the door, you want good people. I'm not saying you want cool people or hipsters or rich or whatever. You just want good people, not dickheads. And you want to be working with people like that, who are just good people, who have got that hospitality gene in them, who like looking after people, who don't mind being on the feet all day, who can deal with dickheads when they turn up, and are just, reliable and have fun and, and care about quality and consistency and atmosphere and all of those key things. And so I think that's kind of what I try to do. Come up with an idea for a venue that's interesting and exciting, that's going to attract people who want that as their evening, or who want to work in that environment as their job. That's kind of what
I'm smiling again because I very recently was chatting to the HO trying to get a license for a town centre location, which I didn't anticipate was going to be a problem at all, but then turned out it was. And I remember sitting down with the licensing kind of guys and going, look, I don't want to attract dickheads. I think that was my exact words. And I said, I tell you how I will attract dickheads is that I'll serve pints of Fosters in plastic glasses, and I'll have a security guard stood down at the bottom with a big bloody yellow jacket on and one of those patches on his arm. I said, and then I guarantee you any dickhead that's walking past is going to go, that's the bar for me. And I said, let me actually sell proper bottles of wine, used glassware, decent beer, no security on the door. And it's I said, I'm not guaranteeing you won't get problems, but the peer group that you start to attract, people look after people, it becomes self-managing. You get the right people in the establishment and they look after themselves.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we deliberately, once we'd opened our first bar and learned a bit, well, even at the opening of our first bar, I decided that we defined ourselves more at the time by what we didn't sell as by what we did sell. So we didn't sell pints at the time. At the time, that kind of binge drinking lad culture was a big problem, and sounds like it still might be in Bournemouth if you're not careful.
Still got a few second-hand parties kicking around,
So we didn't sell that. We didn't sell any energy drinks. That was another thing that was massively popular at the time. I just thought we're not those supercharged dickheads. We didn't really do straight shots. We didn't do things like Jägermeister or that kind of shot, Sambuca. I mean, we did a bit of that, and that was really important to me. And we really wanted to make sure that women enjoyed the environment, because again, you've got to think it was a very male-dominated lad culture at the time. I mean, Old Bar One was changing that, and with their big open windows, and that they're one of their big selling points is that we've got these big open windows so you can see in the venue, rather than these kind of like frosted window pubs that you don't know what you're venturing into. You might get attacked by a dog or anything, so it was really important to us that we did that, and they're a big part, I think, of the success of modern cocktail culture in this, and you see that even more so these days, I think.
Yeah, okay. So continuing your journey, you end up opening a few, I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the first one was so successful that we decided to open a second one in the West End. I can't remember how that decision came about. I think probably saw a signboard outside the venue and thought that might make a good bar. Got inside. There's a bit of brick we could get at. There was some cast iron columns that would look good. I can usually walk in a space and imagine exactly where the bar is going to be. That's the first thing I want to think about, and then how the vibe might work. And so we signed on a site just north of Oxford Circus, which was just opened, I think, yesterday or the day before, was the new Meat Liquor. Mm-hmm. They've moved from their original bricks and mortar site in the old car park that's been knocked down to my second bar site, which is going to be great for them. They've got a 3M license. I think they'll absolutely kill it there, so nice. Good luck to them on that. So we opened what was called Match Bar there, second one. And in my mind, I was about my strategy was to try and create the next generation of bar brand that was cooler, more music-led, focused on quality cocktails and atmosphere and fun than, say, all bar one, pitcher and piano and slug and lettuce. So I wanted to be the next generation of that. So I thought we'd get 5 sites in 3 years or 5 sites in 4 years, and then we'd see where we get to. And when we opened the second site, it was just an absolute killer. It took off like I had no idea. And I thought I had a great little business in EC1, doing £15,000 a week or whatever it was at the time. Thinking, wow, this is pretty good, and so all this cash is rolling in. But it was nothing compared to when you open in the West End, because in East London at the time there just wasn't really that scene. There was a bit of a scene starting to happen in Shoreditch. I can't think of anything that was really open apart from Home and some of the older original bars like Charlie Wright's and Blue Note. Long before Shoreditch became what it is now. And when Match Bar took off, it was doing like 2.5 million a year, 3 million a year. It was killing it.
And was that any food or?
Yeah, but about 10% of food sales. We had a big kitchen and a busy kitchen, but we were selling so many drinks and so many cocktails, especially at the time. This was, I think, October '99. Right. So I was still working as a lawyer then, and I just left my original English law firm, and I was working for an American firm. They just kind of piled into London. They were offering big dollars to young English lawyers, and so I was working for an American law firm, and I remember standing at one point on a giant I-beam we'd had to put in the floor for the structure of the space, my mobile phone ringing, and it was the managing partner, Nick, on the phone to me saying, "JD, where the fuck are you?" And I was like, I'm in the West End. Why? I said, "You're supposed to be at a meeting now with me at Chase Manhattan." And I was standing there in my suit, just overseeing the works. And I went in the next day and resigned. I said, look, they knew I was opening these bars. I wasn't doing this secretly, and I was there at lunchtime. Yeah. And I just ran over a bit late. And I went in the next day and said, "Listen, sorry, I don't want to be taking the piss because I really like the guys I was working with. I'll resign and I'll leave you guys to it, and because I concentrate on these bars now."
Yeah. Excellent. So you have a loose plan. You're going to be open a chain of bars, and from again my understanding is a trip to New York and a cocktail safari kind of skewed the direction. Is that fair?
That's true, because straight after Match Bar we opened Sosho in the following June. So I think we'd opened 3 big busy bars by then in like 20 months, 22 months, something like that. Which is going somewhere. I don't think I could do that now.
Yeah, how old were you then?
How old was I? 26, 27, 28?
Plenty of energy then.
Yeah. And then I remember in 2000, June 2000, was it the year after? I can't remember. Anyway, I went to Ibiza for 6 weeks.
Right.
Rented a villa. I remember my business partner, Rick, who I still work with, I think we were both in the pool one day, and I just heard that the player in Soho had gone into receivership. And it was on the market, and we could pick it up for like 150 grand or something. We're in the pool with Rick. I said, look, I know we're supposed to be opening Match Bars only, but this bar's a great space. It's got a late license. It's a basement place in Soho. We could probably spend another 50 grand on it and have a great bar open. And we decided then that we'd open it. So that we'd buy it, and we spent a week refurbishing it and reopened it, and it was a great space and really loved having that bar. But it did distract us from the Match Bar rollout. But what really distracted us was I was writing for Esquire magazine at the time. I used to have a page every month on drinks and bars and stuff like that. And I'd write about cocktails or beer or wine or whatever it was. And I'd get to go on a few press trips and things like that. And one of them was to New York to go on a cocktail safari with Dale DeGroff, who's like kind of like the Elvis Presley of bartenders if you're American, just an absolute genius and brilliant bloke to work with. But I met him that night, took me on a cocktail safari with about 10 other people. We went to 7 bars, had 2 cocktails in each bar, and then he said, at the end of the night, it was just me and him still going. It's like about 1 a.m., 2 a.m. He said, listen, there's this new place open downtown. You're not allowed to write about it, though. The onder doesn't want any publicity. He said, but I'd love to take you because it's something special. You won't be anywhere like it. And we went in the car down to Milk and Honey on Eldridge Street, wandered in at about 2 a.m. We were the only 2 people in the place. It was probably a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. One bartender, Sasha, standing behind the bar in his sort of Savile Row silhouette suit. And we sat at the bar and I just thought, this place is absolutely amazing. I've never been anywhere like it. Just the whole vibe, the lighting, the music, Sasha, being there with Dale. I mean, I had 14
cocktails. That might help. Yeah.
And I just thought, God, this is awesome. And I'd just taken over a site in Soho through the friend of a friend, and I didn't know what to do with it because it wasn't really a match bar venue. And I thought, this 4-story high space in Soho with a 3M license that used to be a lap dancing club, used to be a live music venue. He had a near sex license, whatever that is. I think that means full nudity. That at the time we ended up giving that up immediately. Didn't know what to do with it. And then I walked in this bar, thought, this is the perfect. If we could do this over 3 or 4 floors, then that's completely sort of intimate, cozy. I hate to use the word speakeasy atmosphere, was perfect for that Soho site. And I remember saying to Sasha that night after 14 cocktails and a whiskey he'd given me that, have you ever thought about opening one of these in London? He'd only been open a few months. And he said, I've never been to London. I'd love to go to London. I'd love to open a bar in London. It's like, well, why don't we? And almost, less than a year later, we'd opened in London. And he'd moved out here and he was brilliant to work with and the most kind of inspiring person. Yeah, I mean, absolutely awesome. So, and we opened Milk and Honey in, God, when was that? April 2002. And that was just an immediate, massive success. And he more than anybody, Sasha more than anybody, has changed cocktail culture in the UK and worldwide, I think, in the last sort of 15 years.
Yeah.
The biggest influence, definitely.
But you've managed to keep that one relevant and cool and successful.
Yeah.
And I never hear in the bar trade, it's got such a huge amount of respect for such a long period of time, which is unusual because generally places come and go.
Yeah.
What's the secret there? How has it sustained itself?
I think hotel bars have that longevity, don't they? They sustain and they're just, I think it's stewardship, I mean, you look at a bar like the American bar at the Savoy, I mean, head bartenders are there for decades or, a long time, and then they hand on the baton to someone, who wants to do that too. And I've just been really fortunate at Milk and Honey that, well, for starters, working with Sasha, he would come here 3 or 4 times a year, update the playlist, say, look, that's deteriorated a bit. We need to get back to that standard of doing it. I mean, the intensity and the sort of like his obsession with making the best and the freshest and the, and at the right temperature drink was just, sort of borderline a bit bonkers, but actually really brilliant, and he was so focused on the guest experience and just delivering the absolute best he could every time. And he'd come back and make sure the standards were maintained. And he just inspired like dozens of already brilliant bartenders, to be better. I suppose a bit like, the manager of a football team can bring out the best. You hear about Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, taking great players and making them, world class. I mean, I think Sasha did a bit of that for some absolutely brilliant bartenders who've been match bartenders and then wanted to work at Milk and Honey because they saw that as a step up into a different level of kind of technique and attention to detail. And then they became head bartender, they became GM, and Milk and Honey is just fine. I never have to go there. I literally never have to go there, and it just looks after itself because of a brilliant succession of bartenders that have worked
bedded
there.
in now, presumably. Yeah. So it's just hand over the baton. So, Yeah, nice. You mentioned earlier about that ability to walk into a space and kind of, see the bar and feel it, and presume I think that's an energy and a vibe thing, and I share that a lot of the time, I think, and it feels like a bit of a curse sometimes, because I've opened a couple of places where I had no intention of doing anything, including the restaurant that I've just opened, but somebody showed me the space and you feel it. Is that something that you just had kind of built into your DNA? Do you think that's where the calling things comes from? You hadn't had any kind of architectural experience, or did you also work with some really good designers that helped you?
No, I don't know actually. It's just something I've got a feel for, and you can often walk into someone else's venue and think, oh, they've got that wrong, and they should have done that. Why have they done that? They don't need those there, and I think, I've tended not to work with designers. Worked with a couple over the years, and including a really close friend of mine, a guy called Mango, worked with me and Sasha on Milk and Honey. And what we've never done is design anything in a studio.
Right.
So everything has been designed on site, in situ. You stand in the space and think, right, where would you put this? Where would you put that? And I think that's made the big difference for us. And a lot of the time it's made up as you go along. Even these days.
I was going to say, we'll come into street feeds, because those they blow my mind.
But it's actually quite difficult when you're working with sites where the landlord wants to see what you're going to do. Yeah. The developer wants to know what you're going to put and say, well, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
You've not built the thing yet. I need to get in and stand in the space. In fact, I'm standing in a space tomorrow that the landlord wants me to make an offer on in the West End. And I think, until we stand in there, I can't deliver a scheme or a plan, and even if we do, I bet you we only do it half of it that way, and we'll change our minds.
Amazing. No, I've never spoken to somebody about that, but I think it's fascinating. I always say the same. We've never rolled out a concept with what we do. For me, every design is specific to the venue, and I've worked with designers, but I always think unless you can stand in a space, and I've had people sort of sketch out stuff and say, oh, could you come and look at this building and stuff like that, and it's exactly that. I think you just need to stand in it and see how it feels, and so much of hospitality is a feeling. It's not, you can get good drinks in loads of places, you can get good food, but it doesn't always feel amazing, which is a bit of a segue into street feast then, because obviously you could have stuck with bars. You were bloody good at them, you had this amazing reputation, they were successful. What was the calling to get into street feast? Because it's obviously in the same sector, but they feel very different. So what was the trigger?
That was a bit of accident and design. Again, I think around 2011, there was the beginnings of like a street food scene in East London, and I really, latched onto it and loved what was going on with Yum Bun and Lucky Chip and Pick Q and these brands, and just thought, these are great. This is exceptional food served quickly and cheaply in these kind of mobile kitchen environments, and the people behind them, Lisa at Yum Bun, Ben at Lucky Chip, and the guys at Pick. I just thought they were brilliant individuals who were just trying to do something that nobody had done before, or do something in this new way. And running a group of bars at the time, we would often struggle to get someone into our kitchens to do anything. And so my business thought was, I can help these guys get inside if they want to do that, and they can help me deal with my food problem, because 80%, 90% of what we sell is drinks, and the kitchen is often just a headache.
Yeah.
And so I was immediately interested in that. Twitter was just starting to happen at the time, and I wanted to help these sort of fledgling businesses market themselves and become something. So we created these kind of like events where we'd bring people down, and I'd provide a load of cheap beer or a load of free drinks or a load of we used to do Milk and Honey, £3 for a pint of mojito on the South Bank at Pick Q, and all the money raised went to buy a new smoker and stuff like that. And it was just like a really exciting event. We had some live bands there, and like 1,000 people turned up. I think the first one I did was at Lucky Chip in near Broadway Market, and we did it on a Sunday, and thank God it was sunny, because I'd been tweeting that I literally bought a bathtub, filled it with ice, rosé wine and Red Stripe beer, said anyone buying a burger from Lucky Chip, it's free beer and a free wine. And at the time you could do a couple of tweets like that, and and 500 people turned up, and it was a massive success. And I just thought, well, this is a really powerful medium for getting the word out, but it's only getting the word out to people who want something cheap or for free. So the next stage of that was seeing if I could use that digital medium to sell tickets to an event. So we came up with these ideas of these food fights, and the first one we did was a chili stand-off. We got 10 chefs, restaurants, to create their best version of a chili, and then you bought a ticket for 20 quid or 30 quid, I can't remember, and you got to try 10 chilies, and you vote for the winner, and they get a trophy, and they win 2,000 quid. And that led to taco wars and gin stock and rum stock and a few other events that follow these kind of under the food fight umbrella. And that was a really great success. It sold out in, we did rib stock, which sold out in 4 minutes, I think.
Amazing.
You
make
like
it sound so easy. You just send out a tweet, do some free booze, but it's
you had to come up with a good name and a good bit of branding, and then get some great names involved. And at the time, again, there was another bit of a zeitgeist. There was a new food happening certainly in this part of London, East London. And that's where I met people like Richard Turner and Stevie Parle and Gizzy Erskine and Carl Clark and all these guys, and Jockey from the Fat Duck. And there was so many people that kind of met at these events, and I met, and you're all thinking, this is great. We want to get into Korean food, and we want to find out about, whatever, the next thing is, or whatever we've not experienced before. And it was a really exciting time to be doing stuff like that. And I remember one summer working with a guy called Adam Layton, who's Noshable Adam on Twitter, and now running the marketing side at Honest Burgers. I think we did 6 events over 7 weekends in Haggerston at the Street Feast site. We did like a barnyard party with Gizzy. We did a backyard barbecue and keg party. We did gin stock. We did taco wars. We did rib stock. We did 6 events in 7 weekends. I don't know how, from my kitchen table. We didn't have an office then. And, we were just sat there and said, what can we do? We need some ideas for some food events. What should we do? And we just came up with these ideas, worked with a graphic designer, ring around some chefs, start the word, and, set the ball rolling. And they just happened. And they were really, everyone joined in. Got people like James Lowe from Lyle's coming and competing at, or join, and these great chefs at the time who've now got fantastic restaurants. I remember the guys from Clove Club, Johnny and Dan, the 2 front of house guys, they won rum stock, which we did in 2012 in the car park behind Jamie Oliver's 15 restaurant. And they worked with Mike Sager from Sager and Wild, and at the time, and they didn't have the Clove Club then, and Mike didn't have Sager and Wild then, and they just, they met and they ended up winning rum stock, and I think they got $2,000 or $3,000 out of it, and they had a great. Yeah. That was a brilliant Sunday.
That's awesome.
And it was just like a really special couple of years. And my mate Dom Cools Latig, who is the founder of Street Feast, had started. I think he'd started just on Brick Lane, and he lasted a couple of weekends there before he got moved along, because it was kind of like a food. He called it a nomadic street food circus. So they'd pop up, get the decks out, get the food on, open a bar, and off they'd go until they got moved on by the council at the time. And he found a nice home in Dalston at the Dalston Yard site that became like the big Street Feast site. And I used to live about 400 yards away. And I used to go there with my kids and on a Friday and just absolutely love it. Ben Spalding was cooking there. He was doing brilliant things with his stripped back concept. And I remember thinking, this is brilliant. I think the bar could be better. Don't really like the DJ that much, but Dom's vision is fucking exceptional, and he's really onto something. And I just loved it. I just used to go all the time, just as a customer. And I remember at the end of that sort of summer, he'd just done about 9 weekends, and I probably went to 7 of them. And I'd eaten at Strip Back every night. I'd been there. He then didn't know what was going to do next. And I think he then found a site which became Merchant Yard in Haggerston, but he didn't have enough money to get it going. And he said, look, do you want to get involved? It's going to cost about 25 grand, I reckon, maybe a bit more. It did cost a bit more. And I thought, yes, but I really want to get involved in making the bars better if we can. And I've got an idea for this space up there. I want to turn into a gin store. And I think we should be selling more of these. And some of the food could be better. And I know these guys who do tacos that are better than those guys that do tacos. I got this guy who does pizza who's brilliant. And I just kind of met, all these people. And can we get Lucky Chip in? And can we, and how about we do this? And, it was just a really creative period with him. And we opened Street Feast Merchant Yard in Haggerston. I think that was kind of May 2013. And I remember realising we're onto something when Dom came in one Friday evening. I think it was the second Friday or the first Friday we'd opened. And he said, I've just got off the overground where you got like 5 carriages. He said it was absolutely packed, and the train stopped at Haggerston and literally everyone got off. 5:30, 6 o'clock. and they were all coming to Street Feast.
Amazing.
And there was a Tesco ATM across the road, and there was like a line of about 100 people, and there's like 400 people queuing around the block to come to merchant. It was just brilliant, you know. And that was a lot of people coming together to do really cool things. The guys doing the food, Dom with all his stuff, and you know, us doing our bar bits, Ben Spalding doing his strip back thing, and it was just brilliant, really.
Yeah. And then, so for those who've not been then to Dinerama, because again, like I say, you make it sound easy, and I'm sure being in the city and all of those people who were in the city and the proximity of them makes it easier to get these people all under one roof. And I've been to Dinerama, and it's an amazing, again, when you talk about how a space feels, it's incredible, and how on earth it was designed, I've got no idea, because it looks like a mishmash of so many different things, but feels incredible. For people who've not been, can you just paint a picture of what these places are like and why they're so different?
It's really hard. In fact, when I meet people for the first time and say, what do you do? I say, I run this thing called Street Feast. They go, what's that? I go, it's like street food night markets. And they go, we have, you know, you try and describe it. I really have to just show them a picture. That's usually get it. And they go, wow. Because some great pictures of Dinerama, some great pictures of Hawker House. But Dinerama, how do I describe it? I mean, we've got, when we took over a 12,000 square foot former car park, which has big iron fencing around it, it was used for bullion trucks, and it's right on Great Eastern Street in Shoreditch. It had no power, no water. We had to use a generator and a giant water butt when we first started there. And we originally intended to open that 2 nights a week for 4 months in the spring and summer, and that was going to be it.
Was it completely empty when you got it?
It was completely empty. There's nothing in there at all. Don found the site. We did the deal. Henry Dimbleby had joined the business by then and was working with us, and he sorted out the planning, which was a miracle. And we got a license for a 1,000 capacity venue in Shoreditch, right on the edge of the special policy area, which is this kind of like exclusion zone of new licenses. And we couldn't believe it at the time, and thank God we did, because it's been a brilliant thing for us, and I think a brilliant thing for our traders and a lot of the small businesses that we work there. We've created so many jobs for young local Londoners, and it's just been, you know, an all-round success. And I can't remember where we got the idea for this kind of like mezzanine structure from, but we originally intended just to have like 2 bars and sort of like 6 street food kitchens, then we'd have some trucks parked outside. We very quickly found out that it's just too hard to deliver the volume and guarantee the consistency unless you've got a proper kitchen. And so I think we've now got 10 kitchens in there. We you know, proper extracts, decent counters. We give these guys a really decent shell kitchen, you know, sinks, you know, for all the health and safety, hand wash and everything else that wasn't there in the early days. So, and then we just kind of built this kind of like Meccano mezzanine iron structure around it, and we put 4 bars upstairs, which we kind of intended would be like rooftop space. So we've got this downstairs semi-covered eating and a little bit of drinking space, and then upstairs is kind of like this big roof area that you go to. But it was so successful throughout the summer that we thought we've got to carry this on throughout the winter. So we kind of winterized it with some makeshift roofs, and then the next season a bit better roofs, and we just kind of grew it like that organically, really. So there's, I'd say 70% set out to design it like that, and then 30% of it's just evolved.
Okay, it's nice to know it evolved, because when I was looking at it, and I went round and I was the only weirdo going around sort of, you know, taking pictures, going, how the bloody hell have they done that? You've got like a kind of trestle roof in one bit, you've got corrugated plastic, you've got big bits of steel, you've got it comes back to that design thing. It
is, but it's also kind of deliberate, because we thought, well, we've done that style over there, let's do something different over there, because that's how it would have happened. You know, it's a bit like you see a streetscape and you can see where some buildings are built in the 20s and some buildings are built in the 50s. You know, you just can tell the difference. You don't want it to all look uniform. Without mentioning names, I don't like going to markets where the owners prescribe the signage. You've got to use this typeface. You know, everyone looks the same. For me, that is visually boring.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of, it's too sterile. You know, one of the key things for me, and I remember when we opened the first Hawker House in Bethnal Green, I think the opening weekend, I remember writing to all the traders and saying, listen, you've all got to have a light box. No one had a light box at the time. Street food is mostly outside. where there's lighting anyway, whether it's daylight or street lighting, and everyone had a chalkboard or whatever. And I said, look, it's not us. We've got to create something that's a bit more visually appealing and exciting, and everyone needs to be unique, and you all need to get a light box. And I was like, fuck, where do we get light boxes from? Everyone's Googling light boxes and buying them off the shelf. Some people were making them, and it made a real difference. And I think I really love that vibrancy and that difference when we in our venues. That I think, and you can see it in some businesses that have followed ours, but the ones where they don't have it, I think it's a real shame. A place I love is DeKalb in downtown Brooklyn. And they insisted there that every trader had to have a neon sign. It's a lot more expensive, but it's fantastic when you go down there. It just shimmers at you, and it's much more exciting. You feel like I suppose it feels a little bit more exciting when you go into a place like that. It's not just somewhere to eat food.
Yeah, and it's actually refreshing to know that it's not overly designed. And I think if you did overly design it, it wouldn't feel the same. It's got an authenticity that you wouldn't get if that had been CAD drawn by an architect, basically. It feels like it's evolved, and it's nice to know that it did. But
also on the bar side, I work with some great guys here, and I said, look, let's do a gin bar. In fact, that wasn't even my idea. That was, I think that was Nicolo came in and said, we need a gin bar. So, all right, we've got an old kitchen from the 50s. Let's do a gin kitchen. Like a Formica sort of yellow. I think it was yellow. It might have been sky blue. I can't remember. And someone finds some wallpaper, and then someone finds some furniture, and I didn't have anything to do with it. They just create this brilliant gin kitchen, and same with German Sex Dungeon. That's our craft can and shots bar. Just said to the bartenders, it's your space. Like you're a trader, you do what you want with it. And what they created was this completely unique look, which ended up being a bit tatty and not really sustainable, but it still feels real. It's not.
Am I right in saying that was about $6,500 and you made it back in a week? Or something?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
I hated you when I read that.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah,
as somebody who spent £500,000
Actually,
once.
10 days. We made back our investment on that bar in 10 days.
Amazing.
Yeah,
it is, and again, it just feels right, and it. I like the fact that I keep saying you make it sound easy, because things like that can end up looking a bit shit or feeling a bit shit.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It just it's just really eclectic, and it works. And I guess being a big empty space in London works. But you have managed to replicate. I've not been to the others, although I've looked at a few photos, and I want to. I keep meaning to come up and just literally spend a day going around your venues, and I will at some point. And my poor bloody landscaper, because we've just built this big terrace, and he keeps trying to over-design it, and I keep showing him pictures of your place and of steel and corrugated bits of plastic and stuff like that. And going, look, we don't need to make this overly designed. But how many have you now got, and have they all got a similar kind of vibe to Dinerama? Or
no, they're all different. I mean, it would be a lot easier if they're all similar, but they're all completely different. And we design them. How we design them depends on the space we get. If we've got outside space, if it's facing the sun, if we, where we are. We've got 4 sites now in East and South East London, and some of them are on sort of like 1 year to go leases, which will probably get renewed. We've got 10 years in Canary Wharf, where we went with a more conventional space. And we thought we'd try and sort of adapt our offer to more conventional space, because we really struggle to find sites, really struggle to find empty space in London that we can have for 5 years or 10 years, whether it be a warehouse or a car park. And it was a lot easier a few years ago. And with all the sort of planning and licensing hassle that's, becoming a real problem for us, it's just becoming difficult. So we started to think about going into more conventional, like, let's take the ground floor of an office building, or, which has got double height, reception area, and let's see if we can do something in that. That's kind of why I went to Canary Wharf.
And has it got a similar vibe? It works, presumably?
Oh, yeah. We've got 4 kitchens. Giant Robot in Canary Wharf, we've got 4 street food kitchens and 3 bars. 3 bars there. So it's kind of like it's the same size as Dinerama on the ground floor, but it's just kind of a miniature version of that. Well, Dinerama's got 10 kitchens, 10 bars.
Okay. And then from the other sort of way that I sort of hate you and then admire you is you seem to find these spaces get phenomenal rents and fit them out at what feel like inconceivably low kind of budgets and stuff. Yeah. How the hell do you do that?
Again, I was talking earlier about how we design places and change our minds as we go along and make it up. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is we work with a really good build team, really good friend of mine, Terry, who I actually first met in '96 when he was painting and decorating the flat that I just bought, having come back from Abu Dhabi. And he's been my mate since then. And he's like our builds boss. He's part of our senior team. And he's got some great guys working with him. And he stands there and helps us work things out, and is incredibly patient and understanding when we change.
Yeah. When you keep coming up with a new idea.
Yeah, we build something and say, I don't think that's right, let's change it. And it's just, we're not paying consultants and people to tell us and to suggest and to draw and to do stuff we don't end up using. So it's a very cost efficient way of building, I think. We can build really quickly and relatively cheaply. And I think in terms of the rents we get on some of our sites, it's because we're making use of space that isn't being used. I mean, Hawker House, for instance, that site was empty for a couple of years when we took it over. The landlord is paying rates on that site and is paying security costs to stop it from being squatted. We save them that. He's also about to develop a load of flats and offices around there, so he wants some placemaking. We've helped put Canada Water on the map along with Secret Cinema that were there about the same time, along with Printworks, is there now. It's kind of no longer this strange place. Still a lot of people think Canada Water's in Canary Wharf, but actually a lot of people now know where it is, and it's actually some cool things have been happening there. And I think there's 70 acres of land to be developed there. They're going to build a whole new town, effectively. It's going to take 10 years, but that's the same size as kind of like the whole of behind King's Cross. You see how long that's taken, and I think that's going to happen in Canada Water with... and we're just at the sort of the forefront of that, really, in terms of bringing people to the area.
Yeah. And when you say it's got harder to do that and to pull that off, is it because people now know what you do? Is it the fact that when you started, nobody, I'm just going to take this car park, and people are like, well, anything's going to be better than an empty car park? And why has it become more challenging?
I think, the main reason is we've become a lot pickier.
Right.
So there was a time when we just open anywhere, and even for 6 weeks or 12 weeks. Now, we're a big business now. We've got 300 shareholders, crowdfunded, and we've got a strategy, and we're not doing sites that we can't have for at least 5 years ideally. We will accept maybe a 3-year break, but if we break at 3 years, we want some of our investment back. It really depends on the opportunity. So we're not just taking we could have gone back to Dalston Yard for another year, but we weren't prepared to deal with the landlord there on this kind of like can we, can't we basis. It's just too much of a distraction. We've got to be a little bit more serious, structured and organised than that. We've got to be in central London. We've got to be... The business is at a size now we want to be in central London. So, okay. But I don't want to be in... equally, I don't want to be in a site... I don't want to mention any names because it starts to become critical. I don't want to be in a site that's going to cost me £4 million to open. I don't want to be in a site that's going to cost me £8 million to open. Dinerama cost $600,000 to open, and it made twice that in its first year. Yeah. So, I don't want to be in sites like that. So as I say, I think the main reason is we've become more picky, but when we find the right site, it will be a really good one for us.
Yeah, okay. So, talking a little bit about some of the annoyances of the industry, I suppose, and we touched on this earlier with, kind of sound systems abroad and stuff like that, and I mentioned skiing. Are we still backwards? Are we still over-regulated in this country with the nighttime economy?
Oh, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to get onto this. But,
you can have a rant, go on.
I absolutely despair of what's happening at the moment in the nighttime economy. Hackney is the most vibrant borough in London with the most draconian licensing policy now. And it's just come out of nowhere. There's no need for it. It's a kind of a knee-jerk reaction by some badly informed, ill-intended people, and it's a real problem for us now. We can no longer open if the existing licensing policy, which I think came in was it January this year, February this year, and existed in 2015. Dinerama wouldn't exist, Box Park wouldn't exist. None of these places would be open, and that would be a massive shame. So what we're not seeing is the next Dinerama or the new Box Park or whatever it is opening in Hackney at the moment. There's no outside anything after 10 o'clock across the whole borough, unless there are exceptional circumstances or you can prove, this, that and the other, which is very difficult. You can't get a licence. The core hours in the borough now are till 11 o'clock, I think Sunday to Thursday, and then it's midnight Friday to Saturday. You've really got to push. You've got to have a lot of money and the right lawyers to get beyond that. So you've got no young independents coming in and doing something cool and knocking the established businesses off their perches, and so what you're finding is that the big corporate businesses will be the only ones who will then get into Shoreditch. So I think Shoreditch is going to become, it's already stagnated. I mean, there's no new bars opening in Shoreditch. There's no new life in Shoreditch. There's some rebanded sites and some relaunched sites, which is always good. But, it's a real problem for us. So
and what's because it's so frustrating when it's so good for the town, for the area, for the residents. People enjoy it. It's good for the city's reputation globally. The vibe. What's the motivation? Is it a small number of NIMBYs who just don't want the noise?
It's a small number of old people, were council officials and councillors, deciding and dictating how young people should behave and live their lives, and they're basing it on a generation that is nothing like the existing one. The existing generation of under 35s is fantastic to look after. They aren't big drinkers. They don't go around fighting. They don't cause problem. They are a really lovely audience to look after, and they're just not these kind of like antisocial behaviour problems that there were when I was their age. It just doesn't exist. I think we've had 2 million visitors nearly at Dinerama. We've not had a single incident in the premises which required the police attendance.
That's incredible.
Not one.
That's amazing.
It's just ridiculous that, and I think lots of business, and, on some sunny Saturday nights, Shoreditch on the streets can feel a little bit like Magaluf in terms of the number of bodies out there, but they're a nice group. And the problem is that will deteriorate, that audience will deteriorate, it will become more bridge and tunnel, so less local. The more local you are, the more likely you are to look after your local area. If everyone's coming in from outside because, they're being marketed to by these big corporate venues, then the area is going to deteriorate. And I'm surprised that kind of like developers, landlords, cool tech companies around here aren't doing more to hassle the council. People want to work in this area because they can go out in this area. There's a nice pub, there's a great coffee shop, there's a great, restaurant that you can order at midnight till, and so on and so forth. The recent one I heard about on Shoreditch High Street was there's a bookshop that wanted to have a liquor license to serve, I think it was just wine, only with food, until 10 o'clock, to go alongside this kind of like poetry readings. So to do poetry readings in the evening where you can have a piece of quiche or whatever it is and a glass of red wine, and they were going to stop at 10 o'clock, and their licence was refused because they're inside the Shoreditch Special Policy Area, which is just insane. And that's a licensing panel that's just kind of following the guidelines. Their hands are tied to a large extent, or they weren't brave enough to say, this is going to be fine. This is exactly the kind of thing we should be encouraging. Rather than preventing.
Yeah, that's the frustration when it's exactly what you should be doing to create the space. We do a salsa night down on the seafront on the beach, and we spill off of our terrace onto the promenade. There's no way I'd ever get permission to say, look, we're just going to put out, it's a bit like, again, you put it out on Twitter or whatever, and there's a salsa club that come down from London, and we might have a couple of people on the promenade all dancing. We have a DJ down there blasting music out. Yeah. There's no way you'd ever get permission to do it, right. And we just have to do it sort of in a pop-up style. And everybody who comes down loves it. The people in there's flats nearby, but the whole vibe and the energy, and it's a tourism town, and it's exactly what should be going on in a tourism town. You should just go for a walk on the beach, not even know this is happening, just come across it and go, holy shit, what an incredible atmosphere. Yeah. But at some point, one person will complain, and the council guaranteed will come and shut it down and say you're not allowed to do that anymore. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of asking for forgiveness, not permission. I'll probably regret this because they'll hear it. But it's so important for placemaking, to make places feel relevant. And I know the number of people who come down there, they see those nights, they sit on the balcony overlooking the ocean, and they might live in London, and they think, sorry, I'm going to move down here. This is a cool kind of vibe. Yeah. So it's disappointing. How do we fix that? Can we? Will democracy ultimately sort it out, and the old guys will leave, and the new guys will come in and change it? Or are you more depressed than that?
I really feel depressed about it. I think the next 3 sites will open will probably be out of London. Really? It's so difficult to do anything here. I mean, it's been difficult in Westminster and Covent Garden for 15 years, and now that's happening in Shoreditch, and in fact not just Shoreditch, the whole of Hackney. I think we'll really struggle. I mean, it's been quite straightforward to open in the city. Corporation of London is much more open to licensing, to make it a more livable place to work, or a more exciting place to work. but we maybe we might be all right in Camden, some areas of Camden, should be all right in some areas of Lambeth, Brixton, around there. But I want to be in the West End. I want to be in Hackney, our home borough. We love it here. I first moved to Hackney in '92. All my 4 kids all went to school here and grew up here. It's where Street Feast started pretty much. We should be able to open. Yeah. We should be able to open the world's greatest night market in Hackney that becomes world famous. Someone should be able to do that.
Yeah.
With the existing licensing environment here, that is never going to happen.
Yeah, which is such a shame, especially if you've got a reputation for 2 million visitors and never had any trouble. You're like, where do you want to go? It's like
Time Out Market, that was in Tower Hamlets. Time Out Market got refused, on that site on Commercial Road.
Yeah, it's so
they've gone to Waterloo.
Really?
I don't know if they're going to come here as well and maybe do 2 sites in London, but they got refused planning in Tower Hamlets.
It's over regulation. Well, look, before you explode, there's a couple of other quick things I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
In the actual businesses, so how do you select because the bars you generally run yourself, is that right? And then the food you get other people in to do?
Yeah, we run the bars and then the food guys run it all themselves. Yeah,
which is also a stroke of genius.
We've invested in a couple of traders to help them grow and open more sites, and we're just a silent shareholder, leave them to it, don't interfere in the business. Help them with some social media, some marketing or design support if they need it, but generally we've just become kind of like silent shareholders.
Yeah, that's an incredible opportunity for some people, that incubation. And I know a lot of the people you've worked with have gone on to open restaurants and have great success. Yeah. How do you choose the people that you allow to come in there? Is it are you selecting them? Are they banging on the door?
In the early days, I was pretty much personally responsible for almost everyone, and had quite a clear and strong vision about what we wanted and what was going to be next. And meeting the guys, Chris and Nud at Bredo's Tacos, and biting into my first short rib taco and thinking, my God, this is delicious. We've got to get these guys involved. Biting into my first yum bun, first Lucky Chip burger. I met Dave Carter from Smokestack, and Smokestack's an absolutely sensational restaurant. I don't know if you've been. It is brilliant. Yeah. I met David. He said, listen, I've got this idea for a Texas-style barbecue. I want to ship this smoker over from Houston. Can I come into Dawson Yard? He was a GM at Rocker in Canary Wharf at the time, so I knew he had hospitality experience. And I just kind of took a punt on I liked the guy, I liked what he was doing. I thought no one else was doing this. He's got a really strong design vision. He's, it was a risk we took, and it paid off because he was our top trader from straight early days, and he worked with us for 3 or 4 years before opening his restaurant, and I think all the money we made from street food has gone into that, and good on him really. So in the early days it was about wandering the streets and trying things and seeing stuff online and hearing about things and going out. I remember Pizza Pilgrims when they started in Soho. I was there the second day for one of their pizzas. Thought, oh my God, this is fucking delicious. Got those guys in for a couple of years working with us. They were brilliant. Bao, trying one of their buns is fantastic. They've got, I think, 4 or 5 restaurants now. Crazy. They were superb. Who else? God, there was loads of them. I think they're the main ones. Bredo's were great, obviously.
I don't want to go back to licensing, but that's a clear indication of the incubation that you provide. In the same way that tech companies provide incubation periods and support, you do that. You create this environment with these guys because the statistics of 80% of restaurants failing or whatever, they get to test it in your environment where it's cheap to get into, make some decent money, and then go on to create restaurants and create jobs and create industry. Yet some, I don't want to go back there, but some licensing twat stops you from doing it, which is frustrating. So if people want to, if there's anyone listening and they've got some sort of great street food concept, what do they do now? How do they get to come and to join the party?
It's easy. Just jump on our website. I think I should know the answer to all these things, but I'll leave it to other people.
Do it. Yeah.
I think on our website, just contact us through our website. I think the one thing sometimes people try and come up with too tricky a concept, right, or a silly mashup that's not needed. And it's actually, for instance, quite difficult now to get a really good burger in a street food venue because they've all gone on to open their own restaurants. So Bleecker are doing that burger and Beyond are doing that, So sometimes you just need to do something simple and just do it really well. We've had Fundy Pizza with us for a while and Born and Raised. There's always room for we've got Wonder Crust as well. There's always room for another really good pizza. And it's not just about the food. If you're doing street food, it's not just about the food. It's also about your brand and your design and your attention and interest in creating a space that we're going to give you a blank 3 meters by 3 meters space, and you've got to fill it with your your offer, your brand, your colour scheme, whatever it is. And you've got to be good at that as well. And you've got to be brilliant at the food. And you've got to be great at making sure your staff are happy and smiley and greet people. And, it is a restaurant business in miniature. A lot easier to manage.
It's so much better than a restaurant business. That's why I walked around in awe going, man, this place is, you're some sort of genius, because it is the hardest bit is the restaurant side, the chef side, managing the kitchens, and also the food fads and the change, and to have that ability to outsource that. And the best restaurants are owner managed, it's particularly in the early days when they're in there and they're passionately run, and you've got lots of mini versions of that where the owners are actually in there cooking and they love what they do.
Exactly.
It's a stroke of genius.
That's one of the best parts of street food, which is diluted a bit to some extent as things have taken off, but meeting the person who owns the business or is the chef, and they're cooking it for you right there and they hand it over. And as a chef, that must be very rewarding to see the people bite into that and go, my God, that's delicious. That is really valuable.
And some venues just need an owner operator. I've just sold one of my places, funny enough, to my brother-in-law, and I said, look, it could be a tidy business. I can't make it work, but it just needs the owner to be in there giving a shit about every single person that comes through the door, looking them in the eye, and people buy into that. And we support the underdog. We love to see grafters and people having a go. So it's a great idea.
I think the other thing is it's like a group effort. It's a real team of people. Everyone's doing their own little thing, but we're also all in the same space, and so you've got to be good to work with, fun to work with, and not difficult, no divas.
Perfect. Yeah.
So and so you end up, I think you end up with a really great group of people.
Yeah, and that comes across again through that energy when you're in the building. But the bars you run yourself, and you don't just, you're not lazy with that. You don't just put a bar in the corner. You've got, shop bar and the sex dungeon and a gym bar.
Yeah.
Where do you come up with these concepts from, and why do you split it out and into lots of different spaces? Because it's operationally more challenging, presumably.
It is a little bit, but we started doing that to kind of emulate what our traders were doing. That one of the reasons street food is popular is because if you're just doing burgers, right, you're going to do them really well. If you're just doing tacos, if you're focusing on one thing, pizza, you're going to do it really well, rather than these restaurants that try and do too many things at once. And so we thought we'd do that. Let's do a rum bar. And let's get the bartenders that work there trained up and passionate. Let's find guys who love rum and want to make the best rum drinks and put them there. Let's find the guys who are into gin or whatever and they want to do that. Let's find the guys that are into craft cans and give them a craft can bar with 60 craft beers on. And then maybe we could add some shots on there because they're into tequila and bourbon as well. And then generally, if you're kind of one of our gigging bartenders, you just want to be on the main bar, and it's not a highly skilled position, but you're a good fun person to work with, then there's a person for that job as well. So it was really from that. But we've probably got too many bars at some of our sites.
Well, the bit that makes me, as an operator, the bit that I'd be worried about would be, staff percentage and trying to think if I've got an individual bar and an individual person in every one. But does that become a problem, or have you just got the demand that it's not an issue?
It's not because, selling drinks is, high margin, low staff cost compared to food.
Yeah, true.
And we're not paying, at most of our sites, we're not paying commercial rents.
Yeah.
So we've got, that model has enabled us to do more than you would normally commercially risk doing. In a conventional venue.
No, you're absolutely
so
right,
that's why you can spend a bit more money on look and feel. You can not worry about certain commercial aspects of your model that you would do because we've got that. That leeway.
That's why I wanted to speak to you, because I thought it's a stroke of genius. Yeah. Conscious of time, one of the other things, Whitley, is that you. I know one of your bugbears is this kind of innovation for innovation's sake, and you sort of alluded to it then with don't overcomplicate the street food, and you've won awards for your bars, and I watched the talk you did about the 50 best bars. What's your thoughts on this kind of constant innovation, and do we over innovate, and is it necessary, and what's the secret to actually just making a successful bar?
In food, I think that's not happening a great deal. I mean, there's a couple of places that open, you just know they're not going to last because they're over, they're doing too many, or they're trying to do too many things. I think in the bar world, in the UK bar scene at the moment, there's a real issue with that, where you've got bartenders opening bars, which I think is a great thing, but they're opening bars for themselves, and they're not opening bars for the customer, and they're kind of competing with each other for, innovation and originality and whatever it is that they're interested in, and they've stopped focusing on the customer experience and the atmosphere, and it's become all about the drink and all about the bartender rather than all about the guest. And I just find that really tedious. I mean, I often go into a bar, every single drink on the menu is new, and I'll just have a gin and tonic, although they'll probably fuck that up somehow by adding
it.
Oh yeah, or I'll just have a beer, and I just think, I'd love to try one of your cocktails, but these are all so weird and different. I mean, there's one cocktail menu I looked at recently that sounded like the names every cocktail, there's one or more ingredient I didn't know what it was. And if you're sticking that, what's the point of putting that in front of people? I mean, I've been around a few decades, and I know my drinks, and I don't know what that ingredient is, and is this just showing off? Am I supposed to ask you and demonstrate my ignorance and your superior knowledge, and you feel good about making me feel, Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand where that's coming from, and I just think that happened in food 20 years ago, where you had these chef-led businesses that wouldn't put salt on the table. You eat it this way. I will only cook it that way. I don't care what you want. That's changed now. You've got more mature young chefs, but much more grown up than their predecessors, who are doing things that people like and that they can feel proud of. And I think you've got to get that balance right. And at the moment in the bar scene in London, I don't think that balance is right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. And as soon as you said it, the challenge, like you say, it's great that bar teams or bar people are opening bars, but it exactly that. I've thought of so many chefs I know that have opened restaurants where it's all about the food, and it's not all about the food, and it's not all about the drink. It is about both, but it's also about the music and the lighting and the ambience and the vibe. And it cannot just be completely self-indulgent. And you're right. I love chefs who've been through that journey and come through the other side, where they go through the bit where it's all about them and it's all about their food and it's all about changing things for the sake of changing it. And I love it when they've come through and gone for two reasons. One, you've got to sell what people want to buy, because it's about money, and two, you need the food to be really good when you're not there. And if it's so self-indulgent that it's all about you and your kind of weird steaks, then basically you've got to be there all of the time. But a really good chef needs to know that the place has got to run like clockwork when he goes on holiday for a couple of weeks, otherwise he's going to burn out anyway.
Exactly. And I've eaten at Noma a few times. I've not been since they reopened, and their seafood menu that they've got now, I think last year's seafood menu, people were eating jellyfish. And I was like, why? People are eating the ejaculate from a sea cucumber. Someone's going around arousing a sea cucumber or whatever you have to do to it. And I mean, and there was seafood in every dessert, and it's like, you're just being a dick now.
I'd have to be there with you and see you go off on one of your rants. I've seen a few on Twitter, to be fair, so I've enjoyed those. But you're bang on right. So well done for having the balls to say it. So you must get loads of people coming to you for advice now. You've clearly helped incubate. You've helped connect a number of dots with all the people that you know. Is there either any really shit advice that you see constantly being peddled, where you go, that's bollocks, that's academic, that's not actually going to be the case in the real world? Or is there any bit of advice that you consistently give where you go, whatever you do this, otherwise you're not going to succeed?
I've not seen a lot of crap advice. I see a lot of new business owners making, like kind of textbook mistakes that you just think, I wish you'd let me have a look at that lease before you signed it, or you should have spoken to a licensing lawyer before you tried to open there, or why didn't you just put something on Twitter, or we've got different WhatsApp group chats. But I think the thing about opening your own business is you want to do things your way and do your own thing, and I understand that. So people just crack on and do it, and they learn by their own mistakes. I see a lot of people who don't register their trademark. It doesn't cost a lot of money, a few £100, just and they've got a great name, and you think someone's going to nick that or get close to it, and you need to protect that. I think one cynical thing I often say to people that I'm not sure is true nowadays with the newer generation, who are a little bit more straightforward, and it's that I always, certainly in the bar business, coming from a legal background into working in bars in the late 90s, early 2000s, I very quickly worked out that everybody was lying to you about everything all of the time. I just thought it was absolutely bonkers. Like, I know you've just lied to me, and it's kind of like, you've just lied to me, but we have to pretend that it's not a lie and that your business is great and it's not up for sale, and you've just not had your license reviewed, and just some insane things but I don't think that's the case now, but I think it's worth bearing in mind, because, there will be people that will be lying to you, about stuff that is important to your business. I think successful business owners are single-minded, and so making mistakes that have been made in the past many times by other people is going to happen all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, although it seems ridiculous because we're not reinventing the wheel. People have been eating and drinking for quite a long time, I think, on planet Earth, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think I helped the guys at the Clove Club set up in business. I helped, find that site and negotiate that lease for them. I did all the crowdfunding for them, and they raised £250,000, which was a lot of money at the time. They did that, and they opened their first restaurant on the back, and that was really good to help. And I've done quite a few things like that for quite a few businesses, and just leave them to it. Just talented people who are good at 80% or 90% of the things you need to be really good at to run a business. And if they're lacking the 10%, often what they're doing is they're going to an accountant, or they're going to a lawyer, or they're going somewhere. And I think it's best to go to someone in the industry and just ask them. I know all the law and all the accountancy and all the property and all of this that I need to know to open a restaurant or a bar or whatever you want to do. Just ask somebody like me, or, it's not difficult. I think there are very few people I've met in hospitality, because it's such a great industry to work in, that are protective of their own experience and knowledge. I can think of a couple right now that just would never tell you that. I think a couple that would probably tell you the wrong thing,
really,
just because they don't want you to.
Everybody's lying to you.
Yeah, because they don't want you to succeed, or they don't want you to open that thing around the corner from where they are.
Yeah.
Where I've always been the opposite of that. Gladly share the knowledge and.
I think that's why it's such an exciting industry, is that we do hospitality, and we do that because we genuinely love people, and we like to see human beings having a good time with their friends or their mates or their colleagues or whatever. It's why I love the sector, because you just meet so many good humans. This is called the Humans of Hospitality for that reason. I have the privilege of going around and chatting to people like you, and there's so many just bloody lovely people, which I don't imagine you always get in the legal world, which is why you're probably such a cynical bugger, because I've just spent a few hours earlier this week with my lawyer, who automatically just has to presume the worst in everybody. He just has to presume that everybody's trying to shaft you. Whereas I'm a deluded optimist. So I presume it's been useful. Having that legal background must have helped you out in a lot of what you do. Because a lot of people end up in hospitality because they couldn't do anything else, but you did it and could have. Yeah, no, I think it must have been. I don't notice that it does. I mean, I don't negotiate the line by lines of leases. We have a property lawyer that does that. We have an IP lawyer who registers our trademarks. I don't really do anything legal in our business anymore. But I think any professional background coming into hospitality. I mean, one of the reasons I think I've been successful in hospitality is because I come from a very professional background. And, historically, not the case now, but historically, certainly the time I started out, it wasn't a very professional business in the bit I was in, bars. It was all about getting pissed and getting drunk and some tequilas after work and that kind of thing. And, your mates can have some freebies. And I have tried, I've not always done this, but because I sometimes forget, I've always paid for every drink. Sometimes if it goes a bit late and somebody doesn't come and ask me to pay my bill, I'll forget and I'll do it tomorrow. But I've always paid for every drink. So, and I think that's really important. I'm not in it for the cheap booze or And whenever I buy some yumplings or a pizza or some chicken wings, I always pay. And often the trader or their staff will say, "No, you don't have to pay, JD." I say, "Yes, I do have to pay. I have to pay here because you have to pay at the bar." Yeah, exactly. And I think anybody who's worked in hospitality will insist on paying, because they know how bloody hard it is and how tight the margins can be, and in those early days how much support you need. But you're right. There certainly were a lot of arseholes in the industry, or a lot of people who were doing it because they wanted a trophy or they wanted to get piss on the cheap.
I tell you what, there are still a lot of arseholes around this industry. That's the problem now. We are under a lot of scrutiny and comment and criticism from people who aren't involved in the industry but love it and want to be part of it. And so they write about it, or they review it on TripAdvisor, or they tweet about it, or they just are not, they're pests. They know nothing about what it's like to work in this industry. They don't know what we care about or what we're like as humans, as people. Then they just see something and want to have a go at it. Just because you've written a blog or, you've got 500 followers on Instagram for your food shots doesn't mean you have the right to assume things about anybody. And, I think I don't know where that comes from. And there's a lot of schadenfreude. There's a kind of can't wait for people to trip up, to knock them down and to sort of like gloat over their perceived failure or, criticism. I think, I don't know where, I suppose that's because everybody's that's the online world we live in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too often, especially with TripAdvisor, it's because it's anonymous and because people can make a sandwich or can make their own lunch. They think they know about food and drink, whereas people aren't really going to say they can do law or accountancy. They get it, specialists. But they don't respect hospitality. You know, I make this point about if you're selling cars and you might sell 10 cars a week, maybe, and maybe that's a busy week and it's only 10 transactions to manage, but we're managing thousands and thousands of transactions every day. Yeah. So there's an inevitability that some of those transactions will go wrong and a drink will be too cold or too hot or a glass will be chipped or whatever it might be. It's just because it's thousands and thousands of transactions. So even at 0.5% failure rate, you're going to piss some people off.
I know.
But people don't get it.
I mean, it happened recently when the Jamie Oliver restaurants went under. You know, and the amount of criticism he never saw any of it and he doesn't give a shit about it, but the things that people said about him and his business, fucking clueless. Yeah. You know, there's that phrase Schadenboner you get, that's when I think Veep coined that phrase. People just getting aroused at someone else's failure. You know,
it's a shame.
There's a real issue with that.
And so often it's the people who are sat on their couches and have never actually tried to do it and don't get the complexity of just how hard it is. And I know with the restaurant that closed recently, you said, you know, it is a hard industry. It's a tough industry, particularly the kind of the food-led side of it, I think, and the changes in the last couple of years in pension costs and food costs and the legislation that goes around it and that squeeze margin. I sympathise with Jamie. You know, the market shifted and it's changed and it's tough out there. And it's again one of the reasons for doing this podcast is I don't want the high street just to become dominated by the formulaic big money VC backed people who can squeeze the margins and get those efficiencies, because that would make the world dull. And it needs to be interesting, it needs to be vibrant, it needs to be energetic, so it needs constant kind of new independence coming into it.
Well, that will be great, and that will continue, I'm sure, outside of London, but not in the current licensing and planning environment we've got in this city.
And that depresses me. Well, it's the same, and it's the same in Bournemouth. You know, one of the triggers for this podcast was when 3,500 covers were added overnight, and in London that wouldn't be much, but in our town, you know, it was a lot. It's not a lot in August when we're busy, but it's a lot in January and February. And all of those covers were under one roof, and they're all VC-backed chain restaurants, and they're all boring and dull and formulaic, and none of them are a reason to live in the town, or even for tourists to enjoy the town. It's just a box-ticking exercise, and that kind of stuff frustrates me. But I'm not... You know, there's a place for them, and it's in some ways it's nice to have both. But the reason for having these conversations is that people just think about when they're walking down the high street, you know, go left into a chain or go right into some sort of fierce independent or some street food vendor or something that's going to be the next kind of cool thing. And I just hope people think about it a little bit more, and it makes the world less beige and more interesting, which you do as well. So thank you. If people want to follow your rants, perspectives on life, what's the best place for if they want to come to Street Feast, but also if they want to follow you personally, where should they do that?
Well, our website's streetfeast.com, and all our sites are on there, East and South East London. I think, go to more than one site if you're gonna make the effort to come. I think Dinerama's a great one to end the night on, or get there later, sort of. And I'm on Twitter. I'm Downey JD on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm not really on Instagram much. I just use that as like a personal photo library. That's it really.
Perfect. And then last one, but what's next?
Well, we are desperate to open more sites, and it's just trying to find the right one. We're chasing 2 sites in central London and 10 sites in Manchester. We'll probably, I'd love to do 1, 2, 3 sites by the end of next year. All large scale, venues. But, we've been trying for a good 18 months now. I think it's 2 years. Yeah, the last time we opened a site that's still open is 2 years ago.
Right. Is that the longest period you've been without?
Yeah, pretty much,
opening.
Yeah. I
mean, you having a rest, or are you getting frustrated?
No, I'm getting really bored. I'm really getting bored.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Come down to Bournemouth. I've got a site I could do with some advice on. Good luck, and thanks for just making the world of hospitality both more interesting, because what you've pulled off with Street Feast, I think, is bang on vogue. It feels like a festival. It ticks so many boxes. It just feels great, but also for doing that with a level of professionalism and without the kind of bullshit of just making it, different for the sake of being different. Your kind of commercial perspective, where it's got to make money and it's actually got to be successful and it's got to be run professionally, is brilliant. So thanks for doing what you do, and thanks even more for sparing the time to have a chat with me. We've talked for quite a while, so
no problem.
We better bugger off and let people get on with their days. But thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime.
So there you have it. You have reached the end of another episode of the Humans of Hospitality podcast. Thank you so much for listening. please go and visit our website, humansofhospitality.co.uk, for the show notes and extra episodes and information. And whilst you're there, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and to receive free materials all about the humans behind our incredible industry. Lastly, if you could subscribe, rate and review this podcast, you will be massively helping me out, and it would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll be launching another podcast in just 7 days' time. Cheers.